I'm going to try and get two cases in. We'll see how it goes. The first case is a 50-year-old male that super fit and really takes care of himself, watches his diet, exercises, almost to the point, though, where he's a big corporate executive, runs a very successful company. But it's almost to where he overdoes things, and that's going to be my clue to you when you see what he has going on. Let's go to his questionnaire first. Let's see if we can look at his. Let's look at his questionnaire. There's not going to be a lot on his questionnaire. Are you under? So he's 69 inches tall, 157 pounds. His heart rate 65. He's a specimen. He's very lean. Very bright, intelligent guy. But are you under excessive stress and anxiety right now? Yes, he had two partners in his corporation defraud him and literally is in the subject of a federal investigation. So I'm just giving you the background. This guy came out of it, clean. But the point being is that he was under tremendous duress. And at the same time, he was doing something else related to his diet, and I think it'll show up pretty interesting. He does exercise. You look, he takes no meds. Everywhere is a no, right? So this guy's just Mr. Fit, okay? Let's keep going. Here's one. Do you generally sleep between 5 and 7 hours? Since the stress, he has not been able to get back down and be able to get a good restful night's sleep. So, and that happened back in November. And so that's an issue. And then do you have ringing or buzzing in your ears? Yes. Well, he races cars in the desert, so he's around loud engines all the time. I don't know if we're going to get anywhere with him on that because he's been around a lot of, professionally races cars as a hobby. So I'm not sure we're going to get anywhere with him on that. Let's keep going. No nose. Do you have bad breath? He says yes. Interesting. Do you have pain and burning when urinating? He does. He's been through several rounds of antibiotics, and he also has been trying all kinds of things to get this under control, and nothing's really helped him. You'll see his uric acid is relatively high in a minute. And then reduce urine flow, forced urination, yes. And then decrease sex drive, yes. And trouble getting erection, maintaining erection, yes. All of those things going on since all the stress hit back in November. So once again, a powerful signal of what cortisol can do. Let's go to his labs now. View his report. And I've seen this man for 3 years, and he was the picture of health. He was just really, like I said, fit, took care of himself, and he's still that way. But he's had this, hey, life gets in the way sometimes, right? He had a big event happen. And let me show you what happens to his labs. And here we go. So right away you see, now none of these readings are high. Like I've always told you guys, somebody that's 500 or more on their initial reading, you start to think about it being really important. In his case, when you see his labs, you'll know you do have to take action. He's well. He doesn't feel bad. He's got this burning on urination. His concentration's off just a shade, and his sleep isn't quite as restful as normal. But other than that, the guy doesn't have a complaint. And so if you notice here, the cardio points are really in bright red. We'll see why in a minute. His pancreas in yellow, his liver and lymph are obviously a little congested, and his testosterone is trending low, which would, of course, sync up with this questionnaire. If you look at his risks, this is probably one of the better people I've seen. And I'll tell you what, if we'd have done this test back in October, I bet you most of those yellow would have been in the green. But the intense duress he's been under, and the fact that he had to really rally on his company and make sure that it was protected, and it certainly caused a huge risk to him. So let's take a look. Look at his cortisol. His cortisol is at 21.2, so we know his cortisol is trending high and his sodium is starting to trend low. Bottom line is he's pumping out too much serum cortisol. Love to see a 4-point on him, but all we got is this. His thyroid hormones look pretty good. Everything's solid there, so there's no problems there. His ferritin is good. His glucose is good. His HDLs are okay. If you look at his hemoglobin A1C, though, he's at the high end of normal. He trains hard all the time, pushes himself really hard. And this guy's a case, he's not a closet eater. I mean, he has a few beers once in a while, eats a little bit of sugar here and there, but really not very much. But I'm convinced that his hemoglobin A1C is affected because of his kind of, let's face it, he's a race car driver. He's an entrepreneur. He's one of those guys that really likes to live with that eye of the tiger in him, and yet he's very self-actuated at the same time. If you look, his IGF-1 is trending really low. That's most likely because of his cortisol being elevated and that he's pushing himself too much. His potassium's off a little, but you know what? For this guy's diet, he should not be having a 137 triglyceride. But wait a second. Why? He heard that taking MCT oils was really good for you. So instead of taking a tablespoon of MCT oil a day, he was taking 6 to 8 tablespoons of MCT oil a day, in addition to a couple tablespoons of ghee. So that thought that, fat doesn't disrupt your lipid chemistry, not in this guy's situation. Wait till you see his LDL particle number. It definitely got shifted. Now, some would argue, if you looked at the Wall Street Journal today, if anybody saw the Wall Street Journal, there was an article in there on stress and lipids, something I've been talking about for a long time. And it's right, cover of Health, D1 and on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So it's finally starting to get uncovered. So you combine the stress with the excessive fat intake with him, and you begin to see this picture play out. You can see his eosinophils are trending high, so with all that cortisol, he's getting a little more allergic. His monocytes are still in normal, but could be a little better. His vitamin D is ideal. He had a low TK1, so we're looking for on TK1, looking for any kind of abnormal cell activity. That's not there. He's doing great. His homocysteine levels trending high. So B6, B12 folate, riboflavin, he's just not methylating that well. Now let's look at his lipid panel. Take a look at this guy. He's got a 300 cholesterol, a 214 LDL, and his LDL particle number is 2613. I think that's my new record. And this guy's as lean as could be. If you look at him coming into a room, you'd think, wow, this guy's just absolutely super fit. But super fit, when you're under intense stress, stress alters your lipids no matter how fit you are. So, and then in addition to that, the insulin resistance he has kind of starts to build those small LDL particle numbers. So you add stress plus the LDL particle, the insulin resistance, that starts creating this really tiny LDL particle. So interesting. I've got him doing his blood pressures for me because he didn't give them to me, and I wanted to know what his blood pressures were. But that's pretty interesting, right? You see that? Because otherwise, this guy's really, there's not that much going on that would make you think he's that way. As you look here, his liver enzymes are just kind of, his ALT's trending a little, but not a big deal. Nothing else really in his blood counts other than he needs B vitamins, right? His mean corpuscular volume, his NCV's trending high, So, and he does, we did start working on getting lead out of him a while ago. His platelets are actually starting to come back. And, red cell width is fine. His white blood cell count, it's actually okay. It's not a big deal there. And then look at his uric acid at the bottom of this. So everything else looks pretty good. His kidneys are filtering, his GFR is good, his proteins are good, but look at that uric acid. So that uric acid is probably in light of an acidic pH, urinary pH, and what to take measures to remediate that. Which obviously cherry juice concentrate, black cherry juice concentrate, stinging nettle are the biggies for that, because he is directly having pain, and it was definitely, in my opinion, that's what's going on. and nobody picked up on it. I mean, I couldn't believe it. They just started giving him a bunch of antibiotics. If you look here, his sex hormone binding globulin is super high, and his testosterone, although it's not great, it's not horrible, but he's got a really high sex hormone binding globulin, once again indicative of stress hormones, insulin resistance. He's really binding up all of his hormones. To me, when you look at his total estrogens, he's got a little too much total estrogen. Now, let's look at his, if you look at his symptoms are all on the testosterone side. Now, he doesn't have a lot of symptoms on the cardiopulmonary side. That's why it's nice when you do both, because you can see that, oh, even though this guy's not having any cardiopulmonary neurovascular symptoms, his LDL particle number was horrible. So, that's why, I think it's important to try to catch both sides of this with comprehensive subjective surveys and labs and biometrics. Really gives you your best picture. He's a great example of one that would have fooled you. And of course, this just goes through and reports, what was off and why. So if you look at lab analysis, Triad 2 came in pretty strong. It's just he didn't have too many symptoms related to Triad 2, or Triad 1, I'm sorry. Gut health is good, bowel movements are regular, nothing going on there. But he's a guy that will start to get a Triad 1 issue. It'll start popping up. He'll start getting midday fatigue. His focus will start to go. I mean, you can see where he's going with, what's going on with him. But, once again, his readings, his numbers aren't nearly as high as some of the other folks that that I've shown you in the past. So let's get to the, what we're going to do about this for him. Now, he is tailor-made for uricoma longifolia. I mean, just the uricoma, or the product Restore T from Compounded Nutrients, is, perfect for him because it's stress-induced elevated sex hormone binding globulin. The cortisol will start to come down. You can even just give him that and not giving him an adaptogen if you want to. But for sure, you would think, you would give him at least something like that Restore T, which is here listed in this. And then because his immune system's on fire and he isn't sleeping enough, you can think of melatonin and Moducare to help his immune system. And then the Coratrin is a red yeast rice product with plant sterols. I think that's valid. I mean, you could use I would use aged garlic extract with this as well. I get great results on improving particle number with aged garlic extract. So I would use aged garlic extract. Make sure he's on something to help him with his sleep. Give him something to remediate his stress. So, whether you want to just give him Restore T or Restore T plus Still Point, like what it says here, this actually is quite a good program for him because he trains a lot. So he's working out. He gets the Wellness Essentials Healthy Balance Packet. He's getting something for his stress, Still Point. He's getting something for his testosterone, Restore T, a little immune support, get the cholesterol under control with the Coratrin, get his magnesium pull up. It's not a bad, that program right there, even though that'd still be quite a few things to give somebody, it's not bad to give them all those. Now, you might decide, maybe if I get his stress down during the day, he'll sleep better. Probably knock out the Triad 2 stuff, the Moducare and the melatonin. The only thing I'd say to that is he reported getting sick for the first time in years in December after that happened in November. So his immune system definitely took a shot, and he even admitted that he felt that way. So that's why that Moducare might not be a bad idea, because you're interviewing him and he's telling you, hey, I got sick. I don't ever get sick, and I got a bug. So this was pretty spot on. Managed it, when his particle numbers as bad as his was, you got to get the lipids down. You got to remodel them. You could think of using tocotrienols if you want. I mean, obviously berberine, but red yeast rice plant sterols and aged garlic extract. I give them 2,400 milligrams of aged garlic extract a day, and that'd be it. So that's our first case. a basically well guy who won't be well if we don't intervene and really get his metabolism back on track. Let's go to let's see if we can get in. Let's get one more case in since we kind of got in through there. All right. So this is I believe, 19-year-old male. Yeah, he's 19. 2 concussions in high school, and when he left high school, went to college, he started having migraines. And the stress of school was getting to him. He had known food allergies, right? So the big reason he came to us was for migraines. He'd been on an antidepressant. And he has anxiety as well. And they were trying him on Prozac, and also he had been on a low dose of a tricyclic antidepressant, none of which were helping his migraines or his panic. But they just kept loading the meds on the poor guy. But he did have rescue stuff for his migraines that worked. But he missed 19 days of school his freshman year of college at a high-end, private school. 19 days in it was obviously starting to affect him. So let's take a look at what he's got. Food allergies, yes. He has anxiety and panic. He was on antibiotics for a cold at the time he came in. He was on inhaled steroids. He also takes Advil on a regular basis. We're growing a real, good drug taker here, right? This boy's only 19 years old. Craves carbs as it relates to his stress. He does get tired after eating a big meal, so we know he's got some insulin resistance. Craves salt, craves comfort food. Short-term memory isn't what it used to be, but he's getting these migraines. They're debilitating. I'm convinced those concussions have got something to do with what's going on with him now, of course. You feel like there's too much stress in your life. Yeah, he was just absolutely stressing out about his school. And his dad just pushed him. When his dad came in the office, I had to have a discussion with him. It was like his dad was ex-military. And, this kid was not a military kid, right? I mean, he just was like, he could tell his dad's just pushing him way too hard. So he's getting too much stress all the time. He has trouble getting up in the morning, can't focus, gets heart palpitations as well with his anxiety. Took the antibiotics for his acne. He gets symptoms with moldy days. He gets chronic skin eczema too. So he's totally a gut case, right? I mean, he's definitely got everything going on. It's in his gut. And gut triggers inflammation response. Who knows if it's the cause of his migraines? But it isn't helping him, that's for sure. And let's see what else. Do you get sick a lot? Yeah, he does. He's got allergies. We already mentioned it. So wheezing, itchy, watery eyes. He doesn't sleep well. He has trouble going to sleep. He perseverates. Only gets about 5 hours to 7 hours of sleep. Ringing in his ears. I'm convinced that he's low in magnesium, and I'll bet that will correct for him. The other thing it might be is he may need some structural manipulation, meaning go to an osteopath to do craniosacral work. That could be a big help for him. He needs to, kind of free up the cranial bones a little bit, get him breathing again. So let's see what else he's got. Everything else is a no. So let's see what our 19-year-old's got going on. We did a food allergy panel on him. He did neurofeedback, and they were looking at different drug therapies based on the neurofeedback, which I thought was kind of interesting. But the drugs just came up with an antidepressant, and we're in the process of getting his labs back. So I don't know a lot about this guy yet. I know that we put him on a program, and he started sleeping a little better. And he's taking Botox injections for his migraines too, which do tend to help him. So take a look at where he's at. He's got immune brain all the way, and then thyroid adrenal pancreas, of course, because he's stressed out and he craves carbs and all those good things. But it'll be interesting to see how thrown off his labs are. But I mean, without a doubt, the whole gut immune brain axis is the problem with him. Scoring 600 points. So for, and this is without labs. He scored 600 points on gut immune brain without any lab values. Think what'll happen when we get the labs in. So where is his stresses at? Obviously, his immune health, his intestinal health, just about everything. I mean, for a 19-year-old boy, I mean, he's not doing so well. Well, it did have labs in it. My bad. I think we did a 4-point salivary cortisol, and that's not back. Look at his sodium, really low. So we had to work at that. His fasting glucose was 76. His red blood cell magnesium was 5.7, which wasn't half bad. Look at his eosinophils. Look how high they are. Look at his monocytes. Look how high they are. He's reacting to food like crazy, and it could be he's got a parasite. Who knows? But we got to track down why he's making so many monocytes and eosinophils. His basophils are high too. Look at this. He's at 19.1, 22.7 on his monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils. So he's neuroinflamed, right? I mean, that's what's going on. His calcium's elevated. His blood pressure is fine. Nothing too remarkable here. His red cell width is just a little off, but it's not a big deal. But by far, his immune system is what's firing off. That's where the big risks are at. Kidneys are fine. Everything's fine here. And we didn't get any sex hormones on him. I think we may have fed in labs on him since it was my case, because I'm pretty sure we took more than that. So if you look at his symptoms, look at his symptoms. His symptoms are all gut immune brain too. So we all know that if people with IBS, people with celiac, they get anxiety, they get panic, they get depression. And so we really have to work on cleaning up his gut and then quieting down his nervous system, because that's where the real key things are with him. And once again, this is the explanation. But what are we going to go through with him? I mean, obviously, we could consider giving him progesterone, for the migraines. Because he's also got this problem of his 2 concussions. We certainly can give him theanine, high-dose theanine, give him some Relora, try to get him to calm down because of his anxiety. He's currently medicated, but they're really not working all that well for him. And I think it's because we've just put him on an elimination diet, so we don't really know what the outcome's going to be with him. Well, let's take a look and see what this suggests. So, I think this is just stinking, it's right on. If you look, Candibactin for Candida, and then Moducare for immune modulation to get the monocytes down, and then the Ultraflora Balance to get the good flora in, and then of course a multi. Which I see if there's anything else recommended. There wasn't. So this is a really good program for him. Probably wouldn't use aged garlic on him out the gate. I'd be focusing on, getting the lymph moving, getting his immune system calmed down, get him sleeping. I would probably add to the still point. I'd probably add theanine. The multi will have enough B vitamins in it for him, and then I'd probably start working on giving him some phospholipids. So whether we did phospholipid therapy by IV or we just started having him eat, 70% choline or the NT factor choline powder. Those are the things I would do for him to get started, and dose his magnesium up, significantly. And then let's see what that brings us. But this is a great case of a 19-year-old who probably had candida and leaky gut anyway because he was asthmatic and he has exercise-induced asthma, had a lot of antibiotics. Well, then he was that person that played football and got a couple concussions. And then so the neuroinflammation was waiting to happen. The disruption in the gut barrier was already triggering inflammation, and then he had a traumatic injury. And now it's on fire, and now he's taking half a year off of school, and he's got to fix all this. So interesting case.
Thanks a lot, Jim. So we just want to open it up for questions. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm starting to get some reports back and wondering, considering the expense of the things involved, the recommendations, it's going to be and the number of pills we're talking about, it's going to be difficult to go anywhere beyond the top triad, and even that will probably be a stretch for some. How long does one continue the supplements for the top triad before rechecking, or
I lost you a little bit. Can you just repeat? You're talking about the number of pills and work on the top triad. What was the? So were you asking, should you retest before you kind of move on from that top triad?
Yes. And is it anticipated that one would move from a triad to another, or just add more pills moving into the second?
You're not going to just add more and more pills, but look, you're not going to get people well by giving them 3 bottles of vitamins. It won't happen. I've been doing this a long time, and you're gonna typically need to give somebody what I do in my practice is I usually end up giving somebody about 6 bottles. And I try to keep it targeted, just like what you said, and I really do try to look at the top triad or 2. Like if it's got immune brain and it's not anxiety and panic, I'll usually start their diet first and give them a probiotic and work on, say it's maybe it's triad 4, maybe they got bad kidney function or something, right? So I'll try to correct. If I don't have a lot of anxiety, cortisol, neuroinflammation, I can try to correct blood sugar through diet. I'll just try to get their minerals in with a multi, right? So you can to your art, you can play around with it. The thing that it's trying to do is just give you the guidance of where are most of the labs pointing and where are most of the questionnaire pointing, and then you can choose. Hey, I don't want people to think they got to give all those things. I want you to think about what are the key things I need to give for this case, because I just got it summarized here really nice, and you can discuss it with the patient, and you can show them the report, and then you can say, hey, we're going to start here, and here's what I want to give you to start. And that's kind of how and so when you start to fix stuff comes off, and then you're going to have to work on new things. And eventually, you'll get to where somebody does, you kind of understand what their baseline is, like what they need to stay well. And then, and that's kind of like after you've been working with them for a year or so. A lot of my folks have been with me, 15, 20 years, and that's how I developed the program, was because if people stick with you, you start to see what they really need instead of like, everybody needs a multi, everybody needs a fish oil, everybody needs, right? If you start doing that, people have got a crap a load of pills before you even get to what they really need to fix their metabolism. So I hope that helped you.
Yeah, can you go to the practitioner comments, recommendations?
For the 19-year-old?
It doesn't matter, anyone.
Sure. Okay.
All right, so the metabolic code diet, are you talking about, is that the
That's the diet that's on our lifestyle guidance portal
Okay.
that is basically an allergy elimination diet.
Okay.
Modified low carbohydrate allergy elimination diet.
All right. And then it talks about alternate every 8 weeks. GI Spec Pro.
Well, that's if you're working on someone's gut, like in his case, because of his asthma and because of antibiotic use has been repetitive. Yeah, so it does. You don't have to use these. You just all it's saying is that while you're working on someone's yeast, you may want to rotate what you're giving. Like you wouldn't want to keep somebody on the same compounds for like 6 months. So typically you would rotate every few months. And all GI Spec Pro is a berberine cat's claw based product, which is different than Candibactin. So they're just different ingredients is all.
Okay.
So like you could even, like if you had something else, like if you had grapefruit seed extract in your office, you could rotate with that. I mean, you could rotate with Oregon grape or olive leaf, but you just want to, the thought is just to be able to rotate.
Okay. How about where it says further cardiovascular evaluation recommended? What do these statements come from? Is that from the questionnaire or what?
Yeah, so either they come based on the questionnaire or they come from the labs. And so this would be like you probably want to do a lipid panel on this person maybe. So you're not, all these practitioner notes are, and we're still refining them. This is version 1.0. There's 20,000 decisions that go into pulling these things together onto this little recommendation just to kind of give you a little heads up when you're walking into the next, appointment with them. And so all of them are just simple suggestions. So have you taken any of the Metabolic Code courses?
Nope.
Yeah, so I mean, it'll, as we continue to have more and more courses up, which we have, or if you want to take a full weekend course too, that'll help you too, because, for example, if sleep's a problem, consider using Neuromedulla. We talk about that in the sleep talk that's posted on the Metabolic Code site. So maybe if you go through some of the talks, it'll help you too, because it'll kind of help fill in the gaps on these practitioner notes. Because honestly, what we're going to have eventually is, this was a kind of a Metagenic-centric database, but we've got other databases that we're working with that will make it more, kind of flexible. So, this was just like I said, it was version 1.
So where it says, like I saw one that says consider or further cardiovascular evaluation, and then in another point it says further neurologic evaluation. I'm thinking, does this mean I'm being recommended to refer them to a cardiologist?
No, all you're trying to do, so this is not a diagnostic tool for finding diseases. This is this is a nutrition support. Evaluate labs, evaluate symptoms, evaluate biometrics, and come up with a nutrition plan, a dietary supplement plan, exercise plan if you want to prescribe it, and basically a lifestyle. And so we're not trying to say, oh, they need to go in and get catheterized, or they need to go in and get an EMG, right? It's what all it's doing is saying, think about this further, as you go into your next set of tests that you order. So maybe what you'd order, you do a full, a little more in-depth immune panel, or maybe you would do an NMR lipo profile. But that's up to you. The whole, the purpose of the notes is just to give you things to consider that I don't know, everybody's different in terms of when they've been doing this work and how long they've been doing the work. So we really put these together to kind of help people that are just starting out so that they're keeping their, okay, gee, I didn't think of this, right? like I didn't remember that I could use methoxyflavones or quercetin to knock down histamine, right? Because you learn so much and you can't keep it all in your head. So we're continuing to create this repository where you can, so this practitioner notes is going to continue to be refined over the next, the next several versions, obviously.
Now it says, that was another thing that I noticed there. If oxidative stress is high, what test are we basing that on?
So oxidative stress could be uric acid in this case. It could be uric acid, it could be methylmalonic acid, it could be deoxyguanosine, it could be myeloperoxidase, it could be VEGF. It could be, those would be, easy enough ones there.
Can this be done at LabCorp request?
Yeah. 90% of the markers that we do are all LabCorp request driven because we got it. You got to use the labs that everybody understands. So and then you want to layer your specialty labs. Like if you got a functional test you want, we layer it in on top, like a food sensitivity panel or toxic metals if it's appropriate, right? You kind of layer that stuff, but you want to get a baseline of what everybody accepts in healthcare, which is, what's your CRP, what's your magnesium, what's, all those kind of things.
The MEB, was it 7 that you wanted? 7 is the cutoff?
7's great if you can get somebody at 7, but if you can just keep them under 10, it's great.
Okay.
Yeah, so even an MEB under 10 is wonderful. But once it gets up over 10, and then you're starting to trend, the monocytes, you worry about it because as monocytes start to trend high, they trigger macrophages. Eosinophils trending high can be indicative of, mast cells leaking, histamine, right? So you kind of want to watch those things and, see how they play out, right? But yeah, 7 would be wonderful. But in the real world, I'd love it if I can keep it under 10.
Okay.
All right. Great. I hope it helped.
Yes.
Good. All right.
Great.
Marta, any other questions, or are we good?
No, looks like we're good. Thanks everyone for attending, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Okay. Bye-bye.